Hello guys, SkyPoint here. Warpforge is officially coming out today on mobile, and I was making this video to help you with your decision on what your first deck in the game should be. I'm going to run through the factions and explain their unique mechanics to you. But if you're here to try to understand, hey, what's the very best faction to pick? The answer right now is I don't think there is a best faction. They're all being balanced continually since the game is very new, and the best faction today may not be the best faction in 1 month's time. So with that, let's just go ahead and jump into the card collection and go through the different factions. We're going to start with Ultramarines. Ultramarines are a faction which is actually quite decently balanced to play around. Some people think it's one of the better ones in the game, but again, that changes over time. Their key mechanic overall is called Codex. You'll see that over here. And Codex is something that triggers each and every time you use up all of your energy during your turn. So some of the units will deal damage randomly, some will debuff others, some will give buffs, some will do direct damage, things like that. So there are several different cards with different effects, but one of the unique things about Ultramarines is they have probably the best hard removal card in the game, which is Inspired Retribution. It's the best because it's not too expensive and you get to choose who you want to kill. This is probably one of the things which makes the Ultramarines most unique over here. So with that, let's quickly move on to the next faction, which is Orcs. Orcs are, I'm seeing, a little less popular than Ultramarines. They're sort of based generally around two concepts. The most important, and this is their unique one, is something called Mob. So you'll see it down here. A couple units have, where's it gone here? The Mob effect. Mob triggers every single time one of your units does a melee attack. Well, one of the other units, apart from this, does a melee attack. So like this guy, the shooter boy, every time one of your units, so your warlord or a troop, does an attack, this guy will deal 1 point of damage to a random enemy. And then there's a few others down here. Mob, every time there's an attack, this guy gets stronger. Further down there's, where's it gone here? Mob, this one will do 1 to 3 points of damage to a random enemy. This one will lower the cost of a random infantry in your hand. And so as the name Mob implies, Orcs tend to be better with large numbers, and so they also have a fairly large number of units which have this tied mechanic. So tied means that when you play the card, another copy immediately gets generated in your hand until the end of your current turn. That lets you put lots of troops onto the board in order to trigger Mob. And the Orcs also tend to have ways of protecting their units, like this one gives armor. There's others which give them extra health. This one gives your units blast, so they do area damage. And so they tend to be about getting large numbers of troops out and doing lots of damage with those. They also tend to be tend to favor a lot of random damage abilities. That can often be handled by, you know, killing all the enemy troops, so the random damage applies to the enemy warlord. Next up, we're on to Eldar. Now, Eldar are kind of cool. They've got two unique characteristics, I guess, or mechanics. That's what I was looking for. One of them is Spirit Stones. You'll see a number of their cards have this little Spirit Stone icon, like this costs 1 Spirit Stone. Down here, this one also costs 1 Spirit Stone. You've got some more expensive abilities further down the list. This one costs 2 Spirit Stones. So what happens is many of your units, if they have the word Waystone over here, when they die, they leave a Spirit Stone on the board, and in your turn you can click on that stone to collect it. In the enemy's turn, they can attack those stones to destroy them. And when as you collect those stones, they get banked, and when you play a card which has the Spirit Stone icon on it, if you have that many Spirit Stones, the effect will get triggered. So, for example, this will normally give your units +1 melee attack. If you have at least 1 Spirit Stone, you'll use up a Spirit Stone and then give your troops melee attack 1 more time. It tends to be pretty powerful quite a lot of the times. There are many units which are decent on their own, like over here, the Vanguard. If you have Spirit Stones, they become very daunting. The second mechanic they have is called Shuriken. So several Eldar units have the Shuriken mechanic, and what happens with that is when you do an attack, they do Shuriken damage first and then their normal damage. This will often let them kill a unit before normal fighting happens. So with this Viper, it can kill anything that has 3 or less health before normal combat begins. So it can kill a 3 or less health unit without taking any damage itself. Or if the unit has a lot more health, I mean, this will do 3 points of Shuriken damage, then 3 points of regular combat damage, although it'll get hit back in return and might get killed. So overall, I think a well-built Eldar deck is one of the best decks in the game. Coming into Necrons, their primary mechanic is reconstitution, basically. Many Necron units have this remnant icon, so when they get killed, they don't disappear completely from the game. Like a little tombstone remains for them, and there are many abilities in the Necron deck which will allow you to reanimate a remnant and bring it back to life. So you'll see here several units even get buffs when they get reanimated, so they're decent when they hit the board, but when they come back to life, they're even stronger. That's the primary mechanic of the Necrons, so they tend to be about sticking around, trying to avoid dying, and coming back to life when they do die. Chaos is all about what's called Dark Pacts. Dark Pacts are like the equivalent of Marks of Chaos from Horus Heresy Legions. Individually, Dark Pacts are stronger than Marks of Chaos, but unlike Marks of Chaos, when you collect 4, nothing special happens. Units just keep building up Dark Pacts. So, as you may suspect, Chaos is about getting certain troops made very, very powerful by constantly getting Dark Pacts onto them. That's pretty much the way Chaos works. It's all about Dark Pacts and armor and regenerating your units and them not dying. And lastly, we come on to Tyranids, and Tyranids tend to play a little bit differently depending on what your build is. Honestly, I think that although I'm having a lot of fun with Chaos, I kind of think Tyranids are one of the most fun factions to play. They have a couple of mechanics again going for them. In general, they favor melee combat, although they have some powerful range units as well. But Tyranids have 2 unique things. One is Swarm, where many of their units, particularly their weaker units, if you play them side by side, or in particular, if you play one of them to the left side of one with the same name, they will actually combine together and merge all of their stats, including their health. That means quite often Tyranid units in the late game, like for example this, where's it gone? This Hormagaunt, individually it's quite weak, but if you play it in like the 8 energy turn, it'll create up to 4 copies of itself each time you play. Whenever you play it, you get a copy of itself until the 4th copy gets made. So this remains useful all the way through to a 10 energy turn, because in a 10 energy turn, you can play this card 5 times to create a super strong Hormagaunt, which has 3 times 5, so 15 health, and 2 times 5, 10 attack. So they tend to build up very quickly, but it's not just their weak units which are useful, they've got some very strong high cost units as well, so Tyranids are an extremely flexible faction. The second mechanic they have is, you'll notice some of their units have something called Synapse. And what this means is when you play a buff onto a unit with Synapse, it also gives the buff to all the neighboring units as well. So typically that'll be troops, but sometimes even, well, let's just take a look here. Yeah. Adjacent units are affected by that Synapse. It can sometimes, in the right conditions, like when you're doing healing cards, it can also help your Warlord as well. So Tyranids are relying on that buff, and also they often have quite a lot of, again, mostly at the lower end, units with Tide, which will create extra copies of themselves. Alright, so that's a very quick run through the unit. So if you like very strategic, tactical play, Ultramarines and their Codex mechanic is what you want, because that's going to be allowing you to trigger powerful effects by spending energy. in a very smart way. Orcs are the faction that, if you like getting lots of troops out there and unleashing chaos with them, that's what you want to go for. Eldar are for doing a lot of damage quickly, but they tend to be a bit of glass warriors. Necron are generally the opposite. They are not doing a lot of damage, very hard to kill. Well, not doing as much damage quickly as some of the other factions, but the Necrons can definitely bring the pain too. Chaos is about creating overpowered creatures and wrecking with them. And Tyranids is about just swarming your enemies with lots of creatures and, yeah, just becoming an unstoppable tide of flesh. Alright, so that's all for this video. I've got a stream to start doing. I hope you found this useful as you start your journey in Warpforge. Alright, thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you on the battlefield. Bye.